Thanks for coming to the Global South panel. I think it's going to be actually a very interesting discussion. To get started, I'll just give us some context. I'm Rose Shuman, founder of BrightFront Group. I was up on the keynote earlier today, so if you were there for that, you have a bit of an idea of who I am. But at BrightFront, we work on mainstreaming innovations with large institutional partners such as the UN, amongst others, as well as foundations and governments and corporations. But we look more at how do you make a new thing happen in a large and complex environment. And we've done quite a lot of work in the Global South, so I am moderating this panel and happy to be here and happy to see all of you. In terms of what is this panel about, it's gone through a little bit of a refinement. Our panelists are actually both from Latin America, so we'll have a stronger look at Latin America. I'll bring in some perspective from other parts of the world as well, but I think we're going to have a very interesting and responsive conversation. It'd be good to also, I'm going to in a minute ask you guys to identify yourself a little bit, so we also know who you are. Then we can bring each other into the conversation and also make sure that we understand why you're here and help ensure that you get what you need from this. So in terms of some just broader overview, Global South is a term that may be new to some of you. It used to mean, previous words that meant the same region was developing world or third world. Now it's called Global South. It's therefore less of an economic judgment and more just a geographical one, but gives a sense of what that term might mean if you're not familiar with it. It's really, the idea here is to look at what can blockchain mean in a less traditional environment with very different capacity, different infrastructure, different social structure and needs in society, as well as just different dynamics in terms of how infrastructures of all sorts, from health and education, economy, business, real estate, transactions are undertaken in terms of the amount of development there is on these fronts. So I think we're going to have a very interesting, wide-ranging conversation about it. Why don't we let Alfonso and Einar introduce yourselves, just a brief one, and then we'll return, and then just get an idea of who you all are, and then we'll open up, I think, a good discussion. How's that sound? Great.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to talk. Okay. I'm a consultant for Metropolis, a consultant for blockchain and urban innovation. Metropolis is a world association of largest cities. But cities that are metropolis are special combination of cities. They're cities that might be with different local governments, different municipalities, each with its own government, but all together into a very large urban complex. So it's a special kind of cities, large, complex. And as a consultant for Metropolis, we did a research for a publication that is internet, metropolis.org. And the publication is Blockchain, a tool for metropolitan governance, with a question mark at the end, because we didn't know if that was possible or not. We did the research, and we looked at each and every one of the 137 city members. And we found 69 cities doing already 254 blockchain projects as of June of this year. Every day, a new project might be coming. So to tell you a simple thing is that's what I do. My interest and my passion is about cities, about citizenship, civic literacy, and using technology as a vehicle, not as a destination. There's a saying in sailing that I like very much, that it is, there are no good winds to sail on if you don't know where you're going. So, that's me.
Hi, my name is Einar Salkas, I'm a different kind of architect than Alfonso. I am actually a software architect and also developer, working as consultant for Suma Technologies in Brazil. It's actually kind of hands-on consulting. So I will be talking here about practical experiences using blockchain. And I'm a Java developer since forever. I worked as a software architect and one of the developers in 3 projects that received the Duke Choices Award at Java 1 in 2003, 2005, 2012. And I'm currently working for providing consulting for TechBan, which is a company in Brazil that provides technology for banks. And just last week, we received an award for a blockchain initiative for a project we developed there for the banks called Interbank. And I will talk about that project during the panel today.
Excellent. Before we launch into it, it's, I think, helpful for all of us to know, to the extent you want to share, who you are by raising of hands. So how many here are representative from a public sector or a social nonprofit type of background? A few. Okay. How many are from companies that develop blockchain solutions? Okay. And how many are from business who would be looking at like business owners or business analysts or business program? All right. Okay. And then we have some, all right. In terms of, raise your hand if you have deployed any projects or been part of a project using Hyperledger. Okay, so a mix. So it looks like a mix of people who have familiarity and also people who are here to learn. If you, okay, I'm going to go on I know people don't like people on the spot, but raise your hand if you would like to have a round in which we actually introduce each other, or whether you want to be quiet and let us drive the truck. Okay, raise your hand if you think it'd be useful to know who else is in the audience versus rather be quiet. Okay. Those of you who raised your hand, plus anyone who changes their mind, do you want to just very briefly say a little bit of who you are, just so we can, again, tune what we're talking about? Yeah? Yeah?
My name is from Brazil.
Yeah, you can use this. It's okay.
My name is Reinaldo Formigoni from Brazil. I work at CPQD. CPQD is a non-profit but private research center in Brazil. We have nowadays 2 ongoing projects related to blockchain. One about traceability for meat chain, beef chain, and another one is related to digital identity, self-sovereign identity, using Indy. And the first one using Fabric, okay?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Royce Fulton. I'm part of a nonprofit based in Geneva looking at building the evidence base for emerging technologies for data for development and sustainable development called Denominator Group. I'm currently part of launching a Gates Foundation funded exploration of blockchain in the vaccine supply chain in Kenya with academic partners there. We hope to distill the best practices and evolve that into some sort of operational framework for incorporating this. So it's a lot to learn, especially from your experience.
Hi, my name is Dorival dos Santos. I'm originally from Angola, in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm actually a graduate student in geophysics, which I know doesn't have anything to do with blockchain, but I understand that there are many applications that could be, that are being developed for blockchain, this type of technologies in Africa. And I have several family members that work for the government, and I've been trying to convince them that there's potential for them to improve what they have using this. So I'm here to learn more, basically.
Hi, everybody. My name is Silvilla. I'm working for FlowCert. It's hello. for fair trade. I'm IT manager in my normal role, but today I'm a technology analyst and trying to find out what blockchain can support us with in the assuring environment.
Hello, I'm Kaustubh. I have worked in the MFI industry before as a software programmer, and I'm interested in blockchain is because it gives us abilities to do the credit history management, and if we can use blockchain to create securitization of MFI loans. So something along those terms. So that's what I'm here to explore. And I've come here in this specific discussion to know is what kind of real life challenges one faces while working in environments where the infrastructure is not so good.
My name is Eric Walton. I'm a retired restaurant owner in northern Thailand, and I've been working with self-sovereign identity for a couple of years, kind of on the side. I'm particularly interested here because there's, I hear a lot and lots of wonderful things about how we can monetize identity and engage the data economy, and nobody in my backyard really cares about that at all. And financial inclusion is also not a particular interest. There are existing banking systems. They are informal, but they are effective. And so nobody, while everybody has a phone, nobody necessarily needs an app to manage an identity wallet. So I'm trying to understand how we can use the SSI and Hyperledger Indy kind of technologies that are starting to surround these people and connect them to that kind of ecosystem and their day-to-day life. So.
Yeah, hi, Nate Cooper, and I work for the International Federation of the Red Cross, based in Geneva as well. We're very interested in blockchain, cash transfer, kind of from an accountability perspective, as well as digital identity, financial inclusion, social inclusion. So.
Hello, my name is Fabiano Franz. I'm the country director with World Vision in Timor-Leste. And we are building a payment system with the government for financial inclusion and emergency preparedness. And I'm here to learn about what others are doing and, yeah, just to other applications.
Okay, I'm from the company Refusely. This is a Swiss company, and portfolio involves security documents like passports, IDs, including banknotes. And we are interested to embark in the new generation of IDs, which are digital IDs, but for governmental use. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Did everybody who wanted to introduce themselves? Okay. I think this was great, Ave, so we know what we're going to drive our talk towards, and also you guys now can find each other, and I think discover who the other folks in the room are that share some interests, so this was good. Now we can kick off. So let's start with our plan here, which is to let Einar and Alfonso talk a little bit more about your relevant projects in blockchain. So both of you have, you've done some deep research and you've done some intensive deployments, and I think that we can talk a bit about these as research summaries and use cases so that we can share and learn from that, and then go into some broader questions about the role of blockchain in the global south and try to tune what we talk about towards your interests, and then bring into a bigger conversation towards the last third or so, I think. But you can also raise your hand and jump in and interrupt as well politely so that we can make this an actual interactive time. So without further ado.
Okay, I will start talking about the interbank project I mentioned. What happens in Brazil is that it quite often happens that a large bank has either too much cash, physical money, because, well, certain day there are too many deposits. Or one large bank needs a lot of money to feed ATMs, agencies, and that happens all over the country. And usually, those banks would have to go to central bank in Brazil to either deposit or withdraw money. But the problem is that central bank charges a considerable fee for that service. The banks can save a lot of money by simply exchanging the money between themselves, the physical money. But then there is an additional problem to that, is that there can be no mistakes or mismatches on that kind of operation, because each single operation is millions in physical money exchanged between banks. So if there is any mismatch, you actually have literally a truckload of money lost somewhere, not knowing where to take the money. In some kinds of business, it's acceptable to have some percentage of mismatches, something to conciliate later on operations. But for other kind of business, that's not acceptable. And that's exactly one case where it's not acceptable to have a single mistake. And I think that illustrates very well one of the important points of using blockchain, which is to guarantee operations without any chance of mismatches. So the protocol itself, it ensures that no operation can be can fall in that kind of situation. So technically, you have in blockchain, you have always, each operation has the hash of the previous one, so you cannot just skip an operation. It's very, without using blockchain, it happens all the time that whenever two companies make transactions with each other, then at the end of the day, one company says, okay, well, this operation you are mentioning, I don't have it in my system. Or that operation you are talking about, the data I have here is different. With blockchain, that cannot happen because first, every operation is signed by the participants according to pre-established rules. So if it's signed, then no side can say, well, I have different information. No, the information was the same and it was signed. You cannot have a different one. The blockchain itself has always the hash to the previous operation, so you cannot skip an operation without noticing it, because then the hash won't match. And you cannot have the same operation stored twice, because the protocol itself guarantees against double spending. So that's the reason this particular project was implemented using blockchain, Hyperledger to be more specific. And that's a good case for the big advantage of using blockchain in comparison to other technologies.
I'd like to share one basic, if you want, a philosophical idea, and then 6 lines of actions that we found in those 69 cities, those metropolis. The main philosophical idea is that blockchain was created to solve particularly problems of the design of digital money, okay? And it provided an IT solution, okay, for the double spending problem and for the peer-to-peer transaction. Basically, what blockchain did at the beginning, and the beginning was Halloween night 10 years ago. So the last day of October, which is Halloween, you know, in Mexico is Dia de Muertos, okay? That's when Nakamoto decided to publish his white paper, okay? One wonders if there was an intention, now with the Halloween joke, or it was just a coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences. So that's what it was created for. But very quickly, many people realized that what it was all about was the register, immutable and decentralized, register of the ownership of an asset and of the transaction of the ownership of an asset. In this case, Bitcoin, digital money. And someone else said, listen, if you can register the ownership of an asset and transfer, then any asset that can be registered digitally can be transferred. So the philosophical idea is, blockchain was created for the transfer of money, but immediately everyone realized that it was possible for the transfer of value. And by value, I mean financial and non-financial value. So we can have total value. Financial, in the terms that we all know, and the banks know, but also in terms of many other values, which might be ethical, might be related to food, to culture, to whatever you want. Okay? If the value can be described precisely, digitally, then ownership of that value can be recognized and transfer of the ownership is possible. So blockchain, everyone talks about blockchain and the beginning of internet. I'd like to be disruptive. I'd like to say that blockchain is equivalent to the invention of computing. Okay, we all remember the movie about Turing and the machine for deciphering the German messages during the war. Okay. Well, blockchain allows the internet of value, allows the internet of transactions, but at the very end, what it is allowing us to do is a computation of value. And that is unique. And that is something that we have since Halloween 2008. That create new, not trick or treats, but trades of value. Okay? What are the 6 lines of action we found in our research of 137 cities? One is identity and citizenship and democracy. The second line is land. Property of land, registry of land, and land uses, land values. The third is everything related to infrastructure and public services, because we're talking about cities. So those 3 first lines are about us, the persons, about our position in the territorial world, and third, about the channels we have for interchanging many things, from vital fluids to transport to whatever exchange of value. On top of those 3 physical lines of action, there are other 3 lines that we found out. Markets, exchanges of value, non-financial. I'll give you an example because we were talking about Wuhan. Wuhan is a city in China that is using blockchain to reward financially ethical behavior. Just like that. Okay. So the 4th line of action is interchanges of value. The 5th is governance, governmental processes. And the 6th line of action we found in those 69 cities out of the 137 members of Metropolis is new financial resources. And to give you a short example there, a very old idea. You see, cryptos is a new currency or family of currencies that, ICOs, which were the rage a year ago, are just another alternative currencies. With the invention of money, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, we had minted coins, which the crowns and the realms use it for paying and collecting taxes. But communities always had communal currencies. Those exist before blockchain, and blockchain is particularly useful, for instance, in Brazil. You have the Banco Palmas in Fortaleza. Okay. Here in Switzerland, you have the VIR. Okay. The Swiss had a cash problem in 1929 during the crash. Believe it or not, Switzerland had a cash problem. Well, they created an alternative currency, 101 on a par with the Swiss franc. It's quite successful, okay? So, blockchain, which is originally a transfer of digital money, became a transfer of value. And values can be found in persons, identity, in land, location, in infrastructure and services, in exchanges of non-financial value, in governance, and in financial instruments.
Excellent. And if people want to find more about this research, where might they look?
You go to metropolis.org. Okay? That's the website of the association. And look at the bibliography there. Issue paper number 5, blockchain, a tool for metropolitan governance, ?
Excellent. And Einar, is there anything online people could look for to learn more about your use case? Or are you the source of all information?
I will be the source right now because the information is brand new. There is no institutional page about it yet.
Okay, there's your resource in person. So we're going to start chatting. I think. Do you want to have a feedback? Okay. Do you guys want a feedback? Yes, please. Here. Why don't you?
So thank you for your talk. And I would like to go back with using blockchain for exchanging identity or using identity to access, for instance, government services, because I'm coming from the field of e-governance. And it really disappointed or didn't meet our expectations because the user uptake of e-services is very low, while the supply of electronic services from the government is very high. And as I identified, the main problem with it was PKI-based enrollment. So citizens have to use e-services of government through the PKI infrastructure, which is like enabled by EID cards. And it's a quite cumbersome process. Involves a lot of different infrastructural elements like certificate authority, like middleware, etc. So this is why user uptake was low. And when digital identity and blockchain-based identity exchange came in for, we all had a hope that that will ease the citizen's task to enroll. But again, I don't see the tool given to the citizen how the process has to be initiated. Again, private key has to be stored somewhere. I mean, it's again very difficult for the citizen, especially for elderly or for underprivileged people. Of course, if you're an IT expert, you can do anything, but I'm talking about general public, right? How digital identity can enable e-governance to function better and for all.
You're quite correct. Okay. I can share some of the examples, okay, that we've seen. Okay. Barcelona and Berlin have identity projects on blockchain. You know, Decode in Barcelona, Hololop in Berlin. Okay. They're basically trying to protect privacy issues while at the same time giving citizens the ownership of data, okay? But it has all the problems that you're talking about for elder and vulnerable populations. The other example that is very impressive is the Indian example of Aadhaar, okay? AADHAAR, okay? Aadhaar is a very simple ID program that's only 12 numbers and biometrics, okay? They have registered more than 1 billion Indian citizens, okay? That doesn't give you any right. It doesn't make you a citizen, or them a citizen. But it identifies the population. Their idea was, once you have bottom-up, identify individuals, then an ecosystem for the transference of value can grow on top of that information. And so blockchain applications, new ideas, startups would grow up. I just learned yesterday from 2 new friends from India that I met at the cocktail that the Supreme Court in India has just forbidden the use of Aadhaar, okay? Because of privacy issues, okay? Now, blockchain could be a no-brainer to solve that, okay? But what I think it's a combination, not always is a technical issue that has to be solved. I mean, technology is a vehicle, but we want a destination. And in social issues, and in urban issues and metropolitan issues, it's that combination, that blending of means, political and technical, where the key to success lies. And there are no prefab solutions that you can use. Every context has to look at their particular combinations. The technicality is there, but the cultural and the social and the political issues are also there. And those cannot come from outside. Those have to be solved within. I know I'm not solving. I'm just sharing.
What happens is that blockchain, it enables us to solve all those problems. But the problems are still there, still out there. The technology is brand new. There is still a lot to build on top of that technology to actually solve the problems. I think that's the main purpose of this conference, is that we realize where we need to go and how to get there.
I think looking at the time in the audience here, we're going to throw all our questions out the window, if that's okay, and actually keep engaging. Given time, this was a great question, and just scraping the surface, I think, of a lot of complex issues. Would anyone else like to respond to either of the case studies? You would, great.
Thank you. Hopefully to frame a lot of this in the context of what I think was discussed, the Global South being a target. And I've come into this conference with, 1,000 questions, and now I have 1,000 and times 10 times 1,000, but maybe try to frame this to get one kind of framing question. There are very unique challenges in each of these contexts that are not seen in your traditional implementation space. You see paper records being used predominantly, and I've heard many people who are working on these initial pilots saying, well, we assume that this problem is going to be solved by 2030. Elon Musk is going to take care of it for us. Okay, sure. We also have the issues of existing fragmentation of technological solutions that have honestly been foisted upon a lot of Global South actors by the Global North. I'll give a great example as being immunization tracking systems. We have 2 of them. We have 2 parallel systems in certain of these countries, and the consequence of this fragmentation is that people are lost in the system. The concern that I have going into a place and trying to build a new platform that is with unproven technology and going in is that these gaps are not, kind of grokked or being made perfectly clear to those developing the solutions. And this is why we focus so clearly on government ownership or country ownership of the implementation. We're not building it, we're letting a Kenyan agency build it for us. So in the end, and we're going to have to look for ways in order to get the data that makes the most sense for those of us acting in global health and development to react to the realities on the ground. We need to be able to aggregate this data across potentially several blockchains. I don't hear a lot of people talking besides just the potential of digital identity solutions, for example, being able to interoperate with each other. While many pilots are operating in different contexts, a lot of them right next to each other geographically. My hope is that my old colleague, Dakota Gruner, ID 2020, will solve all that for us. But again, I think the fundamental question is, going into this conference, is the blockchain community we have now today, the ecosystem we have today, fit for purpose and ready to address the unique concerns of the global south when we come in and develop, as you say, hundreds upon hundreds of pilots, potentially hundreds of competing platforms, maybe one wins out, maybe the other. And second part to that is the Hyperledger ecosystem in particular. Do you feel that it's fit for purpose to that? And if not, what do we need to do to get there? What kind of community do we need to build to orient ourselves towards this future?
Fantastic question. I think it hits upon a lot of the shared issues that anybody working in a global south space, but in any sort of fragmented space would be sharing. Do either of you want to jump in?
Yes, one of the main issues you mentioned is that there are several different solutions competing with each other and the problems about integrating them and the fragmentation. One of the benefits I see also on blockchain is that it's a platform where you don't have a specific owner of the solution. So it's a platform where everyone can participate and nobody owns the network or own the assets. So instead of trying to impose their own solutions, they actually, the companies just need to agree on a network, and every company can work together and contribute to that without the worry that, okay, the information I'm posting will be owned by someone else, or I will be depending on another company to do that, and I will lose the market for myself. Well, the parallel is like the reason why Walmart adopted blockchain to control the entire supply chain is that the main motivation for Walmart was avoiding the need to integrate with all their providers and for being able to track the assets, while just establishing a blockchain solution for them, everyone can just feed the information there, and there will be no need to integrate one system with another afterwards. So part of the solution is that to agree, use blockchain as a standard to provide information instead of different systems that have to be integrated afterwards.
And also I'd like to add, you said it, you frame it quite rightly, okay. It's not about developing in isolation. It's not about selling a product, north to south. It's about finding out a problem that needs to be solved. I mean, startups need a user base, okay, for the startup to be successful. So it's those users that have the problem, the ones we have to look at, okay, but also the ones we have to bring into ecosystems of interaction. Okay, and that's why I like Hyperledger, because it has a greenhouse, okay, and it has a modular set of tools. I think we can continue that line of the greenhouse, the nursery, in its best sense. Continue that line of little seeds and little plants, and work ecosystems of interaction within the global south, as it is called. Because we have a lot of problems, as everybody else. It's not that the north doesn't have problems, okay? All of us need to get together in small ecosystems of interaction where we can use tools that already exist, but also what I would suggest, and that's my dream, at least for cities and metropolis, where we can develop little tools. I mean, the tools for land. Ghana in Accra, in Africa, was the first country to do a land registry. Before Sweden, and before the Economic Authority of Hong Kong. Okay. Well, M-Pesa in Kenya, invented using time in your phone as a currency before Halloween of 2008. And I mean, 10 years ago, you could pay a taxi with your phone in Nairobi. So hardship and misery, like in the song, okay? Hardship and misery are hotbeds for innovation because we have no room. We either succeed or we die. As simple as that. So having that hardship and misery and pairing it with technical knowledge in an ecosystem of interaction where the social implications and the social understanding of what the solution is for, that to me is the key. And Hyperledger has not only come from the open culture, but it has a nursery and a set of tools. It's our duty and my dream that we continue those tools with something more specific and more local.
So I'm going to jump in as well. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think your points are the cross-cutting issues, not just with blockchain, but any sort of new technology intervention in any sort of global south environment, particularly when it's being introduced by an external actor and temporarily financed, but then left behind. I mean, it's in old school development, it's a bit like building schools and then walking away and thinking you've done something when you've got not much of an eye to sustainability and maintenance, which I'm not saying is always the case, but can happen. With blockchain, I think there's still a lot of evolution in terms of how the use cases are going to play out. It has the interesting possibility in that there is the potential for leapfrogging, because of the state of a lot of the existing infrastructure being sometimes quite non-existent or poor. It is an opportunity to, for example, in a lot of existing government infrastructure in what's called the West or the developed world, you've got so many layers of ingrained IT solutions that to scrape those out and replace them is a massive scrapping of investment versus if you're still paper-based or using lighter technologies, maybe there's some potential around that. But you still have issues of maintenance, ownership, sustainability, and because every blockchain is inherently an uneasy partnership between different players or stakeholders in an environment, the amount of work to establish that local ecosystem is not insignificant, and for all of them to commit to maintaining it is something that has to be considered in the long term. And thinking about everybody's incentives, I think, is very important, both their technological capabilities in-house or the likelihood in country to continue to maintain these solutions, as well as how is this going to be a win for everybody involved so that you don't have dropping out and therefore dropping the network to being a non-functional blockchain. So I think that those models are still quite in flux, but do offer potential when you have high corruption and when you do have situations where truth is very malleable. How do you defend against that? And I think that that is what is the exciting part of blockchain in terms of the transparency issues, as well as the immutability issues. You could also get into the ideas of smart contracts and certain things coming into action without bureaucrats or people of different levels of capability or awareness of regulations having to actually make decisions, but having something be automatic. That's actually quite exciting on all levels. But again, you have a lot of legislated entitlements in many governments, but actually for citizens to achieve the ability to receive the benefit of those entitlements is very difficult, particularly when you have a very uneven class of implementers within government and social sector. That is some of the areas I think are kind of exciting about blockchain implementation. Yeah.
The only thing I'll say to follow up with that is that the excitement is also the imperative for us to be able to design so much of this additional infrastructure for governors on the front end. So I have so much of this has to be front-loaded compared to what you're doing. You're just kind of like cleaning up the bits and pieces and filling in the blanks in the developer context, whereas here, those incentives need to be rock solid, or at least to the best of our knowledge, and there has to be a way to mitigate the errors that we make in the process of conferring this additional power to the stakeholders in these new systems.
Tremendous point. I'm going to put in a quick plug for something that may be of interest for most people in here. I chair Hyperledger's Public Sector Special Interest Group. We have a webinar every 2 weeks in which we bring together a pretty diverse range from across the world of folks involved in anything remotely public sector oriented. We have case studies that are shared, as well as a peer group in which we can discuss our people's own issues and concepts the way we are now, as well as learn from case studies. So if you look up Hyperledger Public Sector Group, it's very easy to enroll yourself, and then you'll get announcements every 2 weeks about exciting webinars coming up. Our last one actually had Brian Bellendorf speaking to the group, which was pretty neat as a way to get in conversation with him. Now, as much fun and an interest as this is becoming, I have this sinking suspicion that we're at the end of our time. Am I right?
Can you repeat it again?
The name of the group is Hyperledger Public Sector Special Interest Group, but if you just look up Public Sector Group, you'll find it. And there's a wiki, and it gives you instructions to sign up for a mailing list. So if you just do one thing, just put yourself on the mailing list. You'll then get a mail every 2 weeks about new case studies being discussed, and it's a webinar every Friday, every other Friday actually. So you'll hear my voice on Fridays. But it's actually a very good group of peers for discussing issues and sharing knowledge. So I'm going to shamelessly recommend that you sign up for that. Now, in terms of our timing, I believe we're at time. Is that correct? All right. Well, this has been very brief, but very nice. And I really hope that, and I'll let each of you, send your greetings as well, but I really hope now that folks have had the opportunity to identify one another, that you can start to connect horizontally as well as with our speakers. So thank you. And over to you.
Thank you for the chance of being here and to talk to you. And I'll be around until Saturday night, so we can continue the conversation.
Thank you, and I will also be available if anyone wants to discuss even the more technical aspects of projects I have been working on, or any other way I can assist you on trying to decide what to do on your own projects. Thank you.